really hate spending money on something I don't like, especially money I don't really have to spend in the first place. I took this week off and I decided to treat it like a staycation. I have a travel fund that I've been accruing so I can go overseas, and I said it's going to take me a while to get there. So let me just use some of that money. I mean, it's a travel fund. It doesn't really matter what I'm using it for as long as it's like vacation related. Anywho, so I figured I've lived in my new city a year and change, and I haven't gotten to do anything because I don't have money for it. So while I'm on my staycation, let me eat out. Yeah, I spent $30 on barbecue. I'm a hard critic for barbecue, and I will say the sandwich was good. But the sandwich comes with a side. But they had like non-traditional sides. I would have expected a French fry option for us. Like, I don't eat coleslaw. And coleslaw for me was the most typical side item they listed. But I don't eat coleslaw. They had a tater tot substitute for $4, and I was like, okay, I'll do that, and I will take the tater tots home with me. Those tater tots were so gross. They were so salty, so overseas, and they actually cooked well, but the flavor was so gross. And I was just like, this was not what my travel fund was for. Anyways, while I did not enjoy my dinner, I did enjoy today's book. And today's book is Meet Me at the Lake by Carley Fortune. I have read and reviewed another book of hers. I, for the life of me, can't remember what it's called right now, but I will link it here so you can go see that review. And it was kind of a lukewarm review for me. I liked the book, but I found that I had enough issues that I didn't love the book. Well, I really enjoyed this one. I got through this one so quickly. Loved the narration. Right around the time that I finished this one, the next book by hers that I had put on my TBR popped up, and that is This Summer Will Be Different, and I got through that one in just a couple days. And so I'm rolling with it right now, guys. I'm so excited to finally have some books to bring you that I enjoy. We open with our main character, Fern Brookbanks, and Fern has a plan. She wants to run her own coffee shop. Her grandparents had opened a resort, which her mother then ran after them, and the assumption was that Fern then would run Brookbanks, but she has no interest in running Brookbanks. We learn, because the book kind of takes place 10 years apart, we learn that, okay, so let me just say this. I thought it took way too long to learn about her dad. Her mom was a single mother, and then when Fern was about 17 or 18, she got hold of the journals her mother had written throughout her life, and something in them caused her to rebel. She became super rebellious and made some unwise decisions towards the latter half of her high school career. So we see that she has gone off to Toronto to go to university, and she has no desire to come home. One, because she doesn't really want to face all the people back home. She has a tenuous relationship with her best friend, Whit. So aside from this whole patronage thing, I thought that we had this huge buildup. Sorry, my leg is itching. We had this huge buildup to Fern's bad behavior. And I just didn't think it was that bad. Frankly, I don't even remember what it was. I think she drove a tractor naked or something, or she went into the water. She did something. But I was like, that was it. And I still don't understand what triggered her, because I'm sure she knew about her dad. So I don't know what it was in the journals specifically that caused her to go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But we see that she had gone to Toronto. She had no desire to come home, but she's graduating and she is supposed to be coming home, but she has figured out a way to extend her stay basically under the guise of I'm learning and gaining experience in order to come home and run this business better. She is saying goodbye to Whit, who, again, I don't understand this. I don't know if Whit's problem is Fern or if Whit's problem is she's just a small town girl, because this whole week that Whit had been visiting Fern in Toronto, it was awkward. And Whit keeps saying things about how she doesn't like this big city. But then Fern later on is like, Whit is the person who's always up for anything. She's the yes girl. So I'm like, how is a yes girl somebody who doesn't like a city that's full of yes girl things? She's dropping Whit off and she's running late for her shift at the local coffee shop. She gets there only to learn that they're actually closed because her boss is doing some sort of remodeling, and the painter who is putting this mural up on the wall is finishing up that day, but she has to stay so that he can finish. He's like, yeah, well, if you help me shellac this, then it'll go by quicker and then we can go. She does, and his name is Will Baxter. She's quite unimpressed by his mural. She thinks it's kind of meh. This is what sort of starts things off for them, because she's talking about it with her coworker when Will walks up behind her. They finish up and she is talking about all the things that she hasn't done. So he says, hey, look, like while I'm in town, let me give you a tour of my Toronto. She falls in love with him. But did I mention that she actually has a boyfriend? This guy named Jamie. They've been together for 4 years, which again, that was an interesting relationship because they break up in this 10-year span, but he is still working. So he is an employee at Brookbanks and he is still there 10 years later. And you would think that he would play a bigger role in a romantic way, and he doesn't. It's like he's completely platonic, but we never address that elephant in the room. We barely address him breaking up with her. Anywho, she is just falling head over heels for Will, which I like him. I think he's a really great character. I was complaining in another book review, I think it was Outlander, how she never once thinks about her husband well, not never, but rarely thinks about her husband as she marries and does dirty things with another man. Yet here, Fern is fully aware of the fact that she has a boyfriend. Will also has a girlfriend whose name is Fred. I don't know. I think the only reason I can give this girl grace is because she's supposed to be pretentious. Obviously, through Fern's eyes, we're not gonna like her anyways, but I was like, why Fred? I had a childhood friend whom I called Fred because of her last name, but we never, ever get an explanation as to why this girl's name is Fred. Is her real name Frederica? Or is it just because she's gotta be quirky that her name is gonna be Fred? Because she has to be something of a rival for Fern during this day in which they're walking around the town, that she's got to be Fred. We end the day with they go to a concert while they are at this bar. It's like a friend of his has a band. He's never seen this band. I couldn't even tell you what this band is. I didn't understand the concept. Apparently this band was really good. But while they're at this bar, the friend comes over and he's like, oh wow, Will, you actually came. I'm so surprised. The friend is like, wow, Fern, she's really cute. Let's hook up. And she eventually has to say, I can't because I have a boyfriend, which then bothers Will, even though he has a girlfriend. They're at her apartment later that evening. They decide to make a list of things that they want to achieve in their future. They agree to meet up at Brookbanks in 1 year. She ends up going, he stands her up, so now she is scarred for life. 9 years after that, her mother dies unexpectedly in a car accident, so she has to come back. but she doesn't want to come back because it's derailing her plans. And she also doesn't know what to do with Brookbanks because she can't really bear to sell it, but she also realizes that if she does sell it, she will have the money to realize her dream. The other thing that's happening at Brookbanks is they're not doing so well financially. So she is there, she's working, she's at the front desk when a new guest arrives. She looks up and she's like, I think I know him. And then she's like, do I know you? And he's like, are you serious? And she realizes that it is Will. Will has become some kind of business consultant, which is so far afield from his artist dream, but he's really good at what he does. And he is there because he was going to help her mother figure out ways to turn things around. Frankly, I understand none of it, but this is why he is here. And it makes sense. And of course, for her, she's like, the idea of him being here for free for a month is staggering. But at the same time, I don't think I could have afforded his services, so it's a small price to pay. Although at the same time, it doesn't seem like they're at max capacity, so does it matter that he is using a cabin for an entire month? I'm not super business savvy, so maybe it does make that big of a difference. She is not happy to have him there, and her plan is to avoid. The story bounces back and forth between the two timelines, but I basically have summed up the past timeline. It went really quick. It was really nice. I enjoyed seeing them connect. You do root for them to be together, but because specifically for Fern, she has this boyfriend, you know it's not gonna be able to work out, but you're like, can it work out? So we're just gonna stay in our present timeline right now. And in this present timeline, Fern is sort of reeling from a semi-recent breakup. Her boyfriend's name was Philippe. I believe it was Philippe. It was something French. The way it was described, that she caught him with this other woman, made it sound like he could have been with a man, specifically for me because his name was Philippe or something kind of equally French but kind of feminine and hoity-toity. And I was like, are we trying to say that he's actually gay or that he cheated with a woman? It doesn't really matter. But he's also her business partner of sorts, and they were going to open this coffee shop together. She has also managed to repair her friendship with Whit, and Whit has recently had a baby with her longtime boyfriend Cam. I enjoyed Whit. I enjoyed Cam. I thought they were great additions to this cast. Frankly, I would have liked to have them more. I thought she was so sassy and so fun, which it was hard to reconcile her with the person from the very beginning of the book, where she and Fern, it was such an awkward interaction, and I would have again liked to have seen more of that. Like, how did that patch up? Because if Fern never returns to Brookbanks, which is where Whit is living, I'm just trying to figure out how they're able to mend the damage when they had all that distance between them, because we all know distance creates distance. The other thing in the negative column regarding Brookbanks' success is that there's a new retro refitted inn called the Daisy that is being opened. I would have liked to have seen a little bit about how successful this inn was, because she starts to lose employees to this inn, and I would have liked to have seen, oh hey, actually it wasn't the hit that everybody thought that it was going to be, and all these employees are going to be trying to come back because they jumped ship too early. Again, I don't know much about business, so I really don't know how in the end they were gonna make things work with Brookbanks, because it sounds a lot like we just gotta fire people and cut down on expenses. How do you run a resort when you cut down on the foods you offer and the activities that you have? I don't know, but that's what Will was there for, although it seemed that he had a lot of meetings, and they did meet with at least one realtor about selling. And this realtor, there were ideas as to who this place could be sold to and then what that would be turned into, and Fern was opposed to that, which I don't really understand how she would have any say in any of that, because like once you sell, it's out of your hands. As we move forward with Will and Fern, Fern's first impression of this new Will is shock, because he is so different. His demeanor is so different than the Will that she had met all those years ago. He is much more stiff upper lip and somber and put together and polished, versus the carefree, optimistic, cheeky boy from her past. And she's trying to figure out what happened to cause him to have such a drastic shift in personality, while also struggling with her anger and resentment towards him, in conjunction with her continued attraction to him. And on a more personal note, she is struggling with her feelings regarding the loss of her mother, because when she had decided not to come back to Brookbanks, it took a toll on their relationship. Her mom took it hard, kind of took it personally, because it was the plan. Fern was going to come and work there and be her mother, I think her mother's name is Maggie's successor. And then all of a sudden Fern's like, I don't want to be there and I'm not coming back. Her mom was like, well, fine, do whatever you want, just don't expect me to continue to support you. So they, like Fern and Whit, they had begun to repair their relationship, but Fern didn't feel like it was in the best space when her mother died. Like, they still had more to grow, more to catch up on. And so she feels guilty about the fact that she lost all this time with her mother, and now she has no time to catch up on. Regarding her mother, as I said, she has these diaries. And I would have liked to have seen more of the diaries. I thought the diaries were super interesting, and they gave really great backstory for Fern as well as for her mother, because then there's also a character named Peter who was her mother's best friend. Maggie apparently always had a thing for Peter. I think he said that he liked her from the moment that he met her, but nothing ever happens. Peter's a good bit older than her. He's the pastry chef at Brookbanks. But when her mother meets Eric, who is Fern's father, who is a lifeguard at Brookbanks that summer, Peter does not like him. And then this drives a wedge between them, because her relationship with Eric actually extends past the summer. And so they have a falling out for some time, and it's not until Maggie discovers that she's pregnant and she tells Peter, do things start to mend? I don't know what it is about journals. I always feel like their information is so relevant and interesting, and I never get enough of it. But I definitely felt like whatever was revealed in these journals did not warrant Fern's reaction towards her parentage. What did her mother do that was so bad? I don't know. I still don't understand what triggered Fern. Except maybe she didn't know much about her dad. I think there was a mention of her trying to reach out to her dad and it didn't work out well, or maybe she had wanted to reach out to him and it did not work out at all. There's something. I thought that was a bit of a letdown. This whole build up to how she was so rebellious, what she actually did that was rebellious, and then the why behind her rebellion. All of that to say, she, on top of her feelings for Will and the drama regarding Brookbanks, she's also just trying to reconcile herself to the fact that she lost time with her mother and she wasn't ready to lose her mother for good. Which I also wondered, so her grandfather, I think she said, was the one with money, and that's how he and the grandmother could open up Brookbanks when they were young 20-somethings. Does he not still have money that he could help with Brookbanks? Again, I know nothing about business. Maybe Brookbanks' financial troubles were such that the grandparents couldn't help. But it occurred to me, I was like, but I thought her grandparents had money. Did they not offer to help? it's really neither here nor there. It makes no difference to the novel. It's just those little things that when you're writing a book, you need to consider, because what if your readers consider it? I was just watching this thing about the Hunger Games, and I mean literally 20 minutes ago. So I didn't even look into see how factual this was, but the person who was talking about it was talking about the Mockingjay movie slash book, where the character who had lost their tongue was whistling, and then the point was made, well, you can't whistle without a tongue. And I was like, wait a minute, is that a factual error in the Hunger Games? Yeah, that's just, all these things go through my mind as a reader slash writer. As Fern and Will continue to reacquaint themselves, Fern notices he's kind of secretive, specifically regarding a certain person who calls and their ringtone is bells. He's very open until this person will call, and then he's like, I gotta leave the room, gonna talk in hushed tones. She discovers that it is his sister Annabelle, and that the whole secret, because as I said, Whit has a son. Whit and Cam go off to have a date, which, sorry, I pause because there was something said about her relationship with Cam that made me think they weren't actually together, but they were working things out. But I must have just misunderstood, because they're definitely married and there's no problems there. But they go off to have dinner, and Whit does not particularly trust Fern as a babysitter, or maybe it's because she's a first-time parent, but she leaves a host of instructions, but none of that matters because Fern cannot get this kid to shut up. It just keeps wailing. Will comes over, and he is a natural with this kid, and she's like, why are you a natural? Do you have a child? He goes, no, I don't have a child. But what it turns out is that Annabelle has a child. Annabelle's daughter is named Sophie or Sophia. Let's double check that. Sophie. Basically, Annabelle discovered she was pregnant that same day that Fern and Will had met and hung out. And they don't have good relationships with their parents. Their mother is also an artist, but some years prior, parents had divorced. Mother, not a really good mother in the first place. She pulls up stakes and moves to France. The dad is just a complicated relationship because I guess there's high expectations. His dad has a major blowout with Annabelle because Annabelle reveals she's pregnant. And the dad is like, oh, well, you're never going to keep this kid because Annabelle isn't very responsible. Annabelle, to prove him wrong, is like, oh, no, I absolutely will. So then Will has a blowout with his dad, which I was a little confused about Annabelle because she seemed very much like a passenger princess. She was like a kept woman, essentially, because what happened is that Will gave up his dreams. So here's your big spoiler. Will gave up his dreams of artistry in order to support Annabelle and Sophie. Sophie's dad is somewhat in the picture, but he became the father figure, and he was the one, he was like, I'm going to provide a home for them, and they are my family. This is why it's hard for me to maintain a relationship, because women don't understand that this is my family. I didn't quite buy this whole thing. I thought Will's big secret was kind of a letdown. Your sister had a kid, and you did all the work to make sure that she could give this kid a good lifestyle. And so now Annabelle also has this really great lifestyle. I don't know. But what they're fighting about this whole time is that Annabelle wants to move out and be independent. And I'm like, just let her move out and be independent. Quit being her dad. Apparently, the fact that he is a father figure in many ways causes issues in his relationships with other women, because I guess it's the idea that he'll always put sister and niece before another woman, which I could see that being problematic, especially because that's not your kid. It's just your niece, but it's like his daughter. What Will also recognizes is that Fern loves Brookbanks. As much as Fern wants to say she doesn't want to be there and she wants to sell, he recognizes that it is her home. She loves this place. So she's now in more of a conundrum than ever because she recognizes it as well. She recognizes that this place means more to her than she thought, especially after meeting with that realtor and having all these stipulations about what can and can't be done once it's sold. Will and Fern do begin to sleep together and have something of a relationship. It's a really short relationship because it's only a month-long thing that he's gonna be there, but it's hot and heavy, which is what we all wanted and expected and are happy about. They have a blowout, and then one day he disappears. I think they've reconciled by this point, but he's just gone. He's left all of his stuff, but he is gone. Turns out that he had to go home. So the Brookbanks always does this big dance, and he hadn't been responding. They may have had a fight. Whatever the case, he stands her up, and she's like, where is he? Then she goes to the cabin, and she realizes he's gone. But inside the cabin, she sees all these drawings on the floor, and she realized that he has begun to draw again. But she finds one drawing in particular that just chaps her britches. We don't know what it is. I had a feeling it had to do with when he stood her up. There's something about this picture that's going to explain everything. And in the heat of her anger, when she does manage to get in touch with him, she says, I don't ever want you to get in touch with me again. She decides to keep Brookbanks, and in that, she has to go back to Toronto to pack up all of her stuff and end her lease. And while she's there, this woman shows up at her apartment, and this is when I'm just like, Annabelle, how much money do you have? I thought it was kind of strange that she would walk up with such a fancy handbag and such glam hair and glam look. Sorry, that was my Duolingo. It scared me. So if it's still in this video, that's what that was. It was reminding me I haven't done my practice today. Annabelle tells Fern everything. She tells her that Will had booked it because Sophie had gotten sick. I think Sophie had meningitis and Will needed to go there to be with her, which again, I don't know. I guess because I had a hard time fully relating to why he would just drop everything and not even let Fern know for his niece. I'm trying to wrap my mind around the fact that it's like his daughter, but that he just would ghost her. I don't know. It didn't completely jive. Like, I felt like he did that only because we needed to have the tension in the novel. It definitely went against his character, even if they had been in a fight. Annabelle goes on to talk about all the sacrifices he's made, and she punctuates this whole spiel by saying, look, Annabelle, he's not gonna come to you. If you have told him to leave you alone, he will leave you alone. So if you want to be with him, you're gonna have to go to him. Which that kind of bothered me. I'm not a romantic. We all know how cynical I am. So I don't know if it bothered me because I wanted him to come after her because that's how much she means to him, or if it bothered me because it was like, well, it's all on you. You're the problem. We're gonna step back and we're gonna live our lives, and if you want us, then you're gonna have to come get us. And naturally, Fern goes and she patches things up with Will. He decides to move to Brookbanks, so Annabelle doesn't move out, but she also gets to be on her own because she gets to stay in the house that they had shared, which again, I don't really understand how that works with his work. I guess he can do a lot of things remote. It was kind of a little weird ending, a little bit rushed. Oh, I forgot to mention, the picture that he had drawn was of Fern waiting on the dock for him the day that they were supposed to meet up, which proved to her that, yeah, he was actually there and he stood her up. In the very beginning of the book, when he had given his reason, he just said that things had happened and he didn't want her to judge him. Something about that, about how life had changed and he just didn't know how she would react to it. and this is all in reference to Annabelle and Sophie and him getting into a job that was so outside of the artistry. And this is then when she holds up that picture and she's like, tell me the truth, like, you were there. He says he did show up, but those lists they'd made, he was kind of ashamed to show up for her to see that he did not follow his own list. She was like, look, maybe I would have been disappointed, but what if I'd also been understanding? So that's the whole thing with him standing her up and the why for it. With the whole Jamie thing, I think there's a little bit of flirtation there on his part, more than hers. You kind of get the idea that maybe there could be something there could still be chemistry, and then Will at some point makes a comment that Jamie is still in love with Fern, and she's like, oh no. And I thought that maybe that little, as much as I hate a love triangle, the idea of a love triangle would have been nice. Even if, yeah, Jamie had no feelings for her, or she had no feelings for him, I thought it could have provided a little bit more depth than what we got, because it was very clear how she felt about Will. She did keep pushing him away, but it was also very clear she wasn't going to be able to push him away or keep her distance for long because she still had feelings for him. We also get a little bit of background with Peter and Maggie, because Fern hands over the journals and is like, you need to read these so that he can see how Maggie felt about him. And they get into a discussion about his relationship with Maggie, and he reveals that he had tried to have an official relationship, but she didn't want to do it until Fern was old enough, and then it just never really worked out. It was kind of an on and off again thing, and looking back, Fern could remember moments where she's like, oh, okay, I guess there was more there than I realized. And I don't know, I felt bad for Peter. I thought that was just a weird relationship as well. Like, why couldn't they have had some kind of a happily ever after? Like, I was fully under the impression that they were actually together that whole time, but apparently they weren't. They were in a situationship, I guess, of sorts. This was a nice little romance. I wasn't expecting it to be an open door romance. So when we would get to the sexy time, I just got uncomfortable. I guess because the overall tone of the novel was romantic and love story, and then we would get to the risque bits, and I was like, do I need to see the risque bits? I'm sure a lot of women were like, yes, let's have the sexy time. A good book, if you're looking for a romance, go for it. I thought there were a couple things that could have been fleshed out a little bit more to have, again, just given the book some more depth. But it was so easy to get through, and yeah, I can't wait to hear what you think.